What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Minnesota Vikings Now. My name is Patrick Siepman, and I'll be your host for today's show. And on today's show, we actually got a fun one in store for you guys. We're going to be diving into 3 blockbuster trade ideas, all centered around Danille Hunter. Obviously, we know the Minnesota Vikings just wrapped up mandatory minicamp yesterday on Thursday, and Danille Hunter was still not present. So the NFL trade rumors just around him and if he could be leaving the Minnesota Vikings have really amped up. So we're going to be going over 3 trade ideas around the Star Edge. But before we do so, guys, we're closing in on 13,000 subscribers here at the channel. We're at 12,866. So if you guys can help us reach that goal of 13,000 subs on today's video, it would mean a lot. We'll be your one-stop shop for all Vikings news, rumors, whatever it may be. So hit that subscribe button right now. But again, today's show, we're going to be talking about some Danielle Hunter trade ideas because, like I said, the star edge rusher still has not shown up to mandatory Minnesota Vikings minicamp, and every NFL team has been kind of trying to get their claws or kind of get a feel for what Danielle Hunter could possibly go for. So the first trade that's kind of been thrown out there a good amount by other NFL media members is San Francisco 49ers possibly calling about Danielle Hunter. And, of course, you guys see it on your screen right now. Trey Lance, the quarterback who was born and raised in Minnesota, could he be potentially coming home to Minnesota in a blockbuster deal with the San Francisco 49ers? It was actually Tyler Forness who threw this out here from USA Today, and this is what he said about the Niners potentially trading for Hunter. He said this is a really interesting case. The 49ers have a tremendous roster primed to make a Super Bowl run. Heck, they almost did it with a third-string quarterback last season in Brock Purdy. Well, they have Nick Bosa and a talented interior with Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead. Adding Hunter as a mercenary for this season while also being a long-term option is a very intriguing prospect for them. They could also potentially include Trey Lance in a deal if they choose to do so. And I will say this from the Niners' perspective, if they were to add Danille Hunter to that defensive line unit, this would be a super team. Like, I could honestly make the argument that it would be one of the best defensive lines that the NFL has ever seen. Like, we've known the backbone of this kind of little 49ers run that they have been on over the past couple of years has been that front 7 paired up with obviously Fred Warner, but it was that defensive line. And if you would add Danille Hunter to that group, legitimately, it could be one of the best groups in NFL history from the defensive line perspective. But from the Viking side of things, they would be getting Trey Lance in this trade. And Trey Lance in his career, obviously he's only played 4 games. He's only been the starter for 4 career games in his short NFL career. But the completion percentage, not too high, 54.9%. He's only thrown for 797 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He does have that dual threat ability, which was one of the main reasons why he was selected 3rd overall in the 2019 NFL draft, or 2020 NFL draft, with 235 rushing yards and a rush touchdown in his short career. But could the Vikings be thinking about bringing him home? My overall take with Trey Lance, he hasn't played enough football for really to kind of judge him and kind of make a determination if he will be a franchise quarterback, if he will be one of the bigger busts in NFL history. But I will say I am very interested in Trey Lance and if he could potentially live up to that potential of being the 3rd overall pick. I mean, we've seen, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, 2 of the smartest minds in the NFL. They traded 3 first-round picks to go get this kid. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I am a believer in a guy like Trey Lance. And plus, he grew up in Minnesota. He grew up a Minnesota Vikings fan. So just that little extra motivation for Trey Lance if he were to be brought into Minnesota. Obviously, we don't really know too much about him because he hasn't really played a lot of football in his short NFL career, but I would definitely be interested. But I'll ask you guys, do you want Trey Lance on the Minnesota Vikings? Kirk Cousins, he's got 1 year left on his deal. Would you be okay with Trey Lance being the successor for Kirk Cousins? Give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no down in the comment section. I'll make this the pinned comment on today's video, so YouTube might throw you an ad break your way. Sit back and let it play and give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Trade idea number 2 is actually the New Orleans Saints, and this trade idea was brought to you by Bleacher Report, and they had the Vikings receiving a 2024 second-round pick with Peyton Turner included for Danille Hunter, obviously. And I will say this, in terms of trade compensation and draft compensation for Danille Hunter, I would want a first-round pick for him. I still think when he is healthy and when he is ready to go, he is a top 7 edge talent in the NFL. I think people have kind of almost forgotten of how dominant he truly was during that 2019 and 2018 season, where he did have back-to-back years of 14.5 sacks. Obviously, the 2020 year, he had that neck surgery, which kept him out the entire season. Then that 2020 year, where he only played 7 games, yes, he did have 6 sacks, but he did have to deal with that torn pectoral muscle, which required surgery. But this past season in 2022, he played all 17 games. Obviously, the sack production was not as high as it was back in 2019 and 2018, but he still put up 10.5 sacks. And I will say, in the later half, in the second half of the season last year, we really saw Danille Hunter ramp it up. I think mainly some of his issues from a production standpoint in the first half of the season was honestly the Vikings just switching from a 4-3 base to a 3-4 base, but we really saw him to get comfortable in that 3-4 base in the second half of the year. And the biggest problem with the Vikings moving off Danille Hunter, I will confidently say this, the Vikings defense would be one of the worst defenses of all time from a talent perspective and a roster, just personnel perspective, if they were going to move off Danille Hunter. Like if you would say, oh, what would be the top 3 players on the Vikings defensive, or on the defensive side of the football for the Vikings, obviously Danille Hunter would be one, but then it would be guys like Harrison Smith, or maybe even like you could throw in a Brian Asamoah, who hasn't really played too much. Like from a talent perspective for the Vikings defense, if they were to move off Danille Hunter, probably one of the worst defenses of all time. But the Vikings would be receiving Peyton Turner in this trade from the New Orleans Saints. Another edge rusher, you could actually pair him up with Marcus Davenport, who he played with last season in New Orleans. But Peyton Turner, in 8 games played last season, he had 16 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 0 forced fumbles. Pretty much to sum it up, he's not on Danille Hunter's level, and I don't think any player that the Vikings could get back for a fair compensation could be on Danille Hunter's level. So I'd probably be against this trade. A second-round pick and Peyton Turner for Danille Hunter, I would probably be against it. But this is just a little curious question I had for you guys. What player made you fall in love with the Vikings? Danille Hunter was one of those players for me that really just kind of seeing the way he developed over his NFL career, as he was a second-round pick out of LSU, and he kind of made that huge jump to having all-pro type of seasons for the Vikes. He was one of the guys that really made me fall in love with the Minnesota Vikings, on top of guys like obviously Adrian Peterson, like Sidney Rice. Back in 2009, he had a great season, or even a guy like Harrison Smith, watching him throughout his NFL career. But I'll ask you guys, what player made you fall in love with your Minnesota Vikings? And guys, it might be this guy. It could be Jordan Addison, and we actually have his jerseys on sale right now at chatsports.com/Vikings jersey. Jordan Addison, he's going to be wearing number 3 for the purple and gold next season. And you guys got to get your jerseys ASAP. They are sweet. He's going to have a great career for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm just excited to see him play. So if you want to be rocking your Addison jerseys at US Bank Stadium on game days, just head to chatsports.com/Vikings jersey. I'll put the link in the comments and the description of today's video. But the third trade, this was actually thrown out there by a couple of Bears fans that I'm friends with, and they've been talking about Danille Hunter possibly heading to Chicago, and they just kept it simple. They said a 2024 first-round pick for obviously the star edge rusher, Danille Hunter. And before we kind of dive into this, I have mixed feelings about this. Like I said at the top of today's show, like I would want a first-round pick minimum for Danille Hunter. And obviously the Bears would be offering that, and the Bears could still have a chance to be drafting in the top 10 next season. But I have mixed feelings because I would love to get that Bears first-round pick. Like if that could potentially be a top 10 pick, that could be huge for the Vikings, especially if they could be trying to get the quarterback for after the Kirk Cousins era. Having a top 10 pick could really help that. But I will say, seeing Danille Hunter in a Chicago Bears uniform, I think it would legitimately make me sick to my stomach. And especially if he would be sacking Danille Hunter or sacking Kirk Cousins or whoever the Vikings quarterback may be at the time twice a year, it would really, really make me upset. And honestly, from a Bears perspective, all this, they had a pretty good offseason, but the edge rusher position is still a huge position of need for them, and you would just be handing them one of the better edges in the league in Danille Hunter. So I'll be having mixed feelings about this. I would love to get the Bears first-round pick for next season, but seeing him in Chicago, that'll make me a little sick to my stomach. As always, guys, thank you guys so much for watching today's show. We'll be your one-stop shop for all Minnesota Vikings news, rumors, whatever it may be. Help me out. Hit that subscribe button, trying to reach 13K. As always, we'll see you guys next time. Skol Vikes.